All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Elaine Kelly, and I work here at the Leesburg Public Library upstairs in our Adult Services Center. And I want to welcome everybody here to our tech class on senior-friendly ways to customize Windows 10. And I do want to make a statement that this class is not simply for senior citizens. It is for anybody who uses a computer. Any of these settings can be altered and changed to be able to reflect your needs as you use your electronic device. Computers are designed initially when they come out of the factory to be a one-size-fits-all. And your needs do not represent what my needs are when I look at a particular device. As you can tell, I wear glasses, so I need to have my font sizes and some colors a little bit brighter for myself to be able to see clearly. You who may happen to have normal vision may not need that requirement. And because we have those differences, we shouldn't have to have an electronic device that is just the same for one type of person. We should be able to change it, and luckily we can inside of Windows 10. And that's what this class is all about. All right, so we have a lot of things that we're going to be covering today, and the class is recorded and it will be posted on our YouTube channel, so you can look at it again, pause, repeat, anything like you need with that to be able to make sure that you capture everything that you have. All right, so let me go ahead first, and I'm going to share a screen so we talk about what we're going to be addressing today. Start up. We're going to be going back and forth between a PowerPoint presentation and my desktop. All right, so if I lose anybody, please make sure that you press your space bar and just alert me that you don't see what my screen looks like. All right, so senior-friendly ways to customize Windows 10. We should not have to be afraid of our computer. So what are we going to talk about today? Many of you may be wondering, how do you begin? How do you even think of which items on your computer that you should even be addressing or changing or leaving alone? We're going to be speaking of the process of setting up a new computer. What are those particular steps? We're going to be concentrating our discussion today on just a few. And then we're going to actually go into those particular settings that may be of interest to you that you may want to consider setting up. Now, my conversation and the way I'm going to frame my discussion here is that I'm going to be assuming that you have bought a computer. You are going to maintain the Windows 10 operating system on your machine, and that you are planning on taking that computer and you are going to deliver it to either a friend or a family member that needs a computer at this point. If, however, you are going to be adjusting these computers to fit your needs, just substitute the way that I'm framing the sentence from your friend or your user to you, okay? All right, so first let me go ahead and unpack everything that I mailed to you earlier today. All right, first of all, you're going to get a copy of the PowerPoint slides that we're going to go through here. So you can just have to star anything that it sounds of interest to you. Second thing that I sent you is a 2-page file that talks here about passwords and records. We're going to go over that in just a second. And then the last file that I sent to you were detailed instructions on how to adjust every single setting that we're going to be discussing today. It is a rather lengthy file, but it gives you step-by-step instructions of all the mouse clicks that you would have to do. It's also my cheat sheet as we go through this particular class. All right, so with that stated, let's go ahead and begin. All right, computers themselves, whether they be a desktop, like the image that you see on the right-hand side of your screen, or a laptop, which you see on the left side, they each contain a Windows 10 operating system, a default internet browser. In most cases, this will be Microsoft Edge because that is the Microsoft product. And you'll have a multitude of applications, software, and games preloaded onto the computer. The manufacturers make the assumption that all of us have normal vision, that we want to have high definition to all of our applications and our visuals that we see here, We also have 20/20 vision, and in some cases even better than that because they keep everything very fine and high definition size, and optimized for gaming. All right. So if we don't happen to be gamers and we don't need that sort of application, we don't need all this stuff that's on here. All right. So we're going to talk about how to set something up for ourselves. Because a computer arrives to you from the manufacturer, whether it be that you buy it from Office Depot, Best Buy, or any of other area, it is not customized for you. And as a result, once you start pulling it out of the box and setting it up, you may feel like you're a fish out of water. Do not be alarmed. Do not feel frightened of your computer device. We can actually change and update everything. You just have to be willing to press a button. So where do we begin? Now, if you are giving this computer or electronic device to another family member or friend, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have them write down a list. But if you happen to be in the room with this individual, also take note of anything that you see them struggle with, or they complain about, or you get that little cloud of blue wording all over the place when they try to activate something. We all have seen that and experienced that condition. All right, so what you want to do is you want to take a pen and paper, and you want to ask yourself, or have that person ask themselves, what do I need to be able to use the computer? Just use it. All right. Do I need to have louder volume? All right. I can't hear everything very clearly. Do I need to have larger text? All right. I struggle with my vision, and having it a little bit larger would definitely make my life easier. Do you need help with the mouse? Okay. This is a very critical area here, especially if you have any sort of dexterity issues with your hand. And do you hate pop-ups? I think we can all pretty much say we all hate pop-ups. But write these things down. All right. I see Ken and Sue are both nodding on their screen. But write all this stuff down. What is it that causes you to, get angry at your computer? All right. Those are real critical things for you to note. The second thing that you want to also take a look at and write down is what task do you want to use? For instance, do you want to read your email? All right. Do you want to surf the internet? Do you want to take or share photos via social media? All right. And that's a key one, via social media. If the person is taking pictures and then they can share it directly from their phone where they would be taking their pictures, let them stay on the phone with that. If you have to bring it onto the computer, you're inputting a different element there that could also get them a little bit shaky. And do they want to play a few games? Okay, whether this be solitaire, whether this be mahjong, what are their needs? Write all of this stuff down. The end result is that this is your game plan. All right, you now know what this individual at first blush, what they need to have to be able to use this computer. You do not want this computer to end up being a very expensive paperweight. You want this instead to be something that you know that they will use and that they will feel confident with using. So just having this list as a starting point will get you that much farther to having them accept the computer and use it. All right, so what we want to do is we want to take this piece of paper that we've written all of our items down, and we want to translate it. We want to take it from the game plan, and then we want to figure out what setting or application that we need to do to be able to meet their needs. So if we want to have larger text, we lose the mouse when it's on the screen, the little cursor prompt, and we want to read emails. What do those things translate into? Well, for larger text, we want to adjust the text, maybe even the icon size. What were they complaining about? That they couldn't read the item, or that they couldn't also see the little picture that's right there associated with it. We want to adjust the mouse settings for both size, color, look, or sound. What was it that they couldn't see on their screen that got them frustrated? And if they're going to talk about reading your emails, you want to make sure that the app set up on your email service corresponds to one that they are already familiar with. And sometimes that may be having to place an icon to access that particular application or software in multiple places, whether it be on the desktop, which is the screen that you see, all right, the taskbar, which is usually the black line that runs along the horizontal edge of your computer screen, or your start menu. And that's activated when you press the Windows button right there on your lower row of your keyboard, or via the lower left corner of your screen. The goal to setting up any computer is simplicity, okay? You want to make sure that when the person steps up to it, that they know exactly where they have to go, exactly what they have to do, and there's no extra steps. You want an ease of understanding, all right? If they are at all unsure about a computer, they've never used one before or anything like that, you want to make sure that they build that level of confidence in themselves and that they feel positive that they can do what they need to do. And in some cases, it's all about familiarity, all right? They may already have a smartphone in their possession. They're used to using a particular browser. They're used to being able to see the certain icons to be able to get to certain places, all right? Consider also setting up those icons for them to mirror what they're already familiar with, mirror what they see on their phone. They can do everything that they can do on their phone right now. Make sure that their computer is also set up in a similar way. You will actually be able to bridge that gap to get them to use it that much easier. There's a final goal here that I don't have written down, but I do want to make sure I state this to you. Everybody here on the class right now is obviously a user of a computer, right? You may be on the starting points of it, or you may be a rather experienced user and you're just looking for some additional tips. But regardless, we all use something. What you want to make sure that you consider when you design a computer system for another individual or even for yourself, the only things that you want to put on your computer device is stuff that you personally need. You're going to get a lot of recommendations from other individuals that say, oh, this thing improved my life, best thing since sliced bread. You've got to have this on. And then what happens is a year or so down the road, you take a look at this particular software application setup and you realize, hey, I haven't even used this since this person installed it onto my computer. All right. They're setting the computer up based on their needs, not your needs. And that is a key difference of when you need to take a look at an electronic device. Set it up based on your needs only. If they come back to you and say, hey, Elaine, I find that this isn't working just right. I need to have something a little bit faster, slower, different, etc. Right? Then you have something to work with and you can find something that again meets their needs, but meets it to that next level. All right. So always keep that in mind. Build it for the person, the user's needs, not what you think that they should have. All right. The process of setting up any new computer, we all go through these similar steps. Is the first thing you do is you take it out of the box and you connect it to the Wi-Fi. All right, and the Wi-Fi would be the router that you would be receiving from your internet or cable provider. You install a good antivirus. Yes, your computer comes installed with one. You may want to consider altering that, and we'll get into that in just a second. You may want to replace the bloatware with decent software. What is bloatware? These are any of the items that come pre-installed onto your computer that you have a free 30, 60, 90-day trial on. And then after that point, they will prompt you and say, hey, look, if you want to continue this, you need to sign up and you need to pay some money. All right, that's bloatware. Take it off if it's not something that your user is going to need. All right, so example, if you're not going to use a Microsoft Office package or Microsoft 365 as is now installed onto the computers, just go ahead and disable it, take it off the unit, It's going to pop up. You're not going to want to confuse your person, and you don't want them to worry that they have to give out more money for something. Perform a full driver update. When you connect all of your external pieces to the computer, you're going to go ahead and you're going to find that there may be some updates required for it to interact properly, or just doing a general install. Make sure everything connects and it works right. You're going to look at your internet browsers, and we're going to get into a little bit more with that in a second. You're going to establish any connections into service providers. Make sure everything works. All right. Do not leave it up to the individual. Make sure that it works when you deliver this computer over to them. Save your passwords. And then start adjusting based on your game plan, anything for ease of access. And then you're going to demo that computer, and you're then going to demo it again, and possibly even a third or fourth time. All right. The objective there with step number 9 is confidence. We are going to be discussing today these final 5 steps in this particular process. But if you would like to discuss anything in the top 4, just contact me here at the library, and we'll gladly go through each one of those things, and we'll figure out what your needs are. We are definitely going to concentrate on the step number 8, where we adjust the settings for ease of access. Okay. So I'm going to be flipping some pages here, so bear with me. So the first thing we're going to start about are computer operations. All right. And this is basically the just getting it set up so we can start doing something with it. So the first thing I want to talk about is memory. All right, anybody falls into this category. We forget what happens or what we have to do if we don't write it down. All right, it is a scientific fact that you can only remember 5 things in our short-term memory. And as we try to say we need to remember this, okay, the last one drops off and the new thing comes into place. So we lose track of what that item was that we said we no longer have to remember. So if we don't write it down, we're going to forget it. And this could be a result from injury, stress, medications, or disease. Okay, it's just a fact of life. And the other thing that we also have to consider if we don't write it down somewhere or record it, okay, is that this particular information that we are about to set up for this individual is very critical for a digital estate plan. If something happens to this individual for whatever reason, okay, and you are required to try to either shut down, pause, handle something on their regard to any of their service contractors or any of their other accounts that you're going to be accessing through the computer, you're going to want to be able to get a hold of their username and passwords rather easily. So having a method of being able to record a password is very critical in this particular case. So there's a lot of times that, and I'm even guilty of this, that I do not remember what my username or password is. So if your user, okay, has a system right now that they write everything down, do not try to change them into something that records it electronically in a service that's on the internet. All right, keep it within their comfort zone. If they're used to writing it down, do so. One of the files that I sent you was all about passwords and being able to record that information that you need to have. All right, so this is there. If you were here in class, right in front of me, I would be giving you handouts of this so you'd have it for your use. If you stop by the library, I'll be glad to print you out some. But basically what you want to do first is you want to identify a storage location for your information that you know about it as well as the user is going to have. Assess whether or not they are comfortable with having it in a written or a digital format. In most cases, you're going to be doing something written down. It must be easily updated and it must be easily located. So they need to know where to find it as well as you do. And what you need to record for any document, any sort of service that you sign up for is 1, the website's URL address, 2, the username that you establish for yourself, 3, the password that you put for yourself, and 4, any security question answers, And then the fifth one, which is very critical, is any device and serial numbers. Many times that you can actually go back onto a website's URL address and actually be able to call up service manuals. All right, where do I find people that would be able to service my unit? Let me look at the user's guide. All right, you have to know what your device name is and sometimes even the serial numbers to be able to pull up the correct item. Make sure that you write all this stuff down and include on this list whether or not what the password is to the home router. Many times people come into the library here and they say, look, Elaine, I can't get it to connect into my service at home. I said, well, what is your router's password? And they just draw a blank because it was never written down by either themselves or the service tech. And then they have to go through a series of service calls, which all cost, for that to be able to be reset. And so they can actually tie into it. Now, one other feature that I have in the file that I sent to you is right here in this green column, all right, is that for each individual area, I'm also indicating whether or not it is a paid subscription. So that way, you know, as well as your person knows, that periodically you are going to get an email from this person and they're going to say, to continue, you're going to have to pay some money. Make sure that you know those, because if you ever have to shut something down on their behalf, you know which ones to hit first to try to avoid any sort of coverage charges for an additional year while you try to work through their estate. All right, but again, work with what is in their comfort zone. If they're with digital, set up something that is online that they can actually record and they just have to remember one password. Or if they are very comfortable with writing everything down, set up a very easy written system that you can actually follow. All right, so now that we have gotten at least our computer out of the box, we've got everything hooked up and we've gotten past the very first password, we have to ask ourselves the question about updates. All right, and when you do updates, you can have them done automatically or you can have them paused for when you actually are there in site with them. So how often do you plan on visiting this individual, and do they get confused, frustrated if when they try to power down a computer, that all of a sudden you get that blue screen that says working on updates with the little wheel, and they think that they've done something wrong with their computer. If you want to avoid that situation, all right, you want to do some changes to your computer to be able to allow yourself to get beyond it. All right, if you decide to do something automatically in the background, maybe on off hours when they're not sitting there working on the computer, you may want to set up office hours. If you're considering that you only want to apply the updates in your presence, so that way they don't have to worry about it, you know what's going in, and if any issues arise, then you'll be there to address them. You may want to consider pausing them. All right, but you can only pause an update for up to 35 days. So if you go to visit this friend or family member once a month, this may work right into your current schedule. If, however, you only go and visit them once a year, all right, you need to think of some different arrangements, and that might be with the office hours. One thing that I do want to make sure that everybody is aware of is that updates cannot occur if the computer is in sleep mode, meaning that it goes into a power save mode and it shuts itself off until you activate the power switch again and it wakes up, okay? Your updates will not occur at that particular time. They will just pause and then it still has to redo it again as soon as you wake the computer back up. So instead, what you want to do is leave the computer in an on state and then just shut off the monitor. Now, if you happen to be in a laptop, you can also change the setting to be able to just, when you close the lid, the computer will stay on, but it just blanks the screen out. All right, so how do we do that?
How do you do that?
Yep, we are about to find out. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen again. All right, so I'm going to transition from this particular area to something different. So bear with me. All right, so you should still see my PowerPoint at this point. However, I'm going to go like this. You should now see my desktop. Okay, this is my desktop area. It's nice and blue. So I'm going to actually get to some of these settings, and you're going to see this, the clicks as I go through. But regardless, it is all listed here in my instruction manual that I mailed to you earlier this morning. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our active hours. So down here in the bottom of your screen, bottom left, okay, we have our start menu. All right, it's the very farmost left key that's on our taskbar. You just have to press that and you get the start menu appearing here. Your settings icon is the thing that looks like a little cog, 2 up here from the power. So if I click on that, it opens up your Windows setting form. All right, now for active hours, and what that means is active is when you feel that the user is going to be actually on the computer working on it, and you don't want it to be disturbed with these particular items, okay? All right, start. Okay, if I go into update and security, all right, down here in the center of our screen, we have active hours. And right now my computer is set for 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. If you click on this icon here, all right, you'll open up the actual panel here for change active hours, and you can either turn it on or off, but you can also change it here. And so if you happen to be an individual that works on second shift, you may want to consider changing this from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. Or if you are a third shifter and you work overnight, again, switch these out to reflect when you actually feel that you're going to be on the computer. You're telling the computer that you're going to be active at this time period. At any other time outside of it, you're not going to be on, and to go ahead and do other different things. Okay. To come back, you have a leftward facing arrow button up here on the top left corner. Now it may be hidden from your view from just because of the panel that I have visible here on my screen. If you wanted to do pausing updates, okay, right now it's set for 7 days here on my laptop, but you can do it all the way up to 35. Let's see, and you can change them via the advanced options. You can actually set that for 35. So again, consider your schedule. How often are you going to be there? When can you actually get to the computer? If it's outside of 35 days, don't set this. Keep in mind also that is when you set the 35 days and you apply the updates, for you to be able, before you log off that computer, after you apply everything, reset the option for the next 35 days. It will not be a revolving system. You have to set it each and every time that you want this particular area, okay?
I changed my active hours and saved it. Now, how do I get back to the screen?
So how do you get back to the screen? Okay, up here in the upper left corner of your screen, you should see something that has a left arrow button. If you click that, you should be able to come back to this screen.
Thank you.
All right, now, if you wanted to set the item up for running updates overnight, all right, make sure you set your active hours so you tell the computer when you're going to be on. But then what you want to do is you want to tell your system never to shut off. All right, it will automatically have a setting in there to keep it after like 2 hours, put it in sleep mode. All right, so how do you check that so it does not come back? All right, up here on the top where I have settings, I'm going to go back one level. So I'm back here at my main Windows settings page. Okay, and again, everything I'm going to keep doing is just going to be going back to here. Now, I will not ever fully apply an update for you. That's why I have my PowerPoint, only because if I go ahead and I apply something, odds are I may lose our connection to our class, and which is not something that we want to do. Okay. All right, but to check it so it stays awake. Okay, here we are in our big system. We want to go over here to our systems setting. All right, on our left-hand side of our screen, we want to go into power and sleep. The fifth one down. All right, and my laptop here is set on, here are my sleep options here. If I'm on battery power, my PC goes to sleep and I have it set to never. The one you want to say if you're going to have it plugged in is if when it's plugged in, you want to say it goes to sleep and you want to set it to never. Right now, this may have it set for something different. Just click this downward facing arrow and change it to the other setting. Once you do this with your office hour settings, you will now tell your computer, go out in these off times and be able to apply the updates. Again, consider what will make your user very frustrated. And if they get frustrated with all of the updates that come in with the little circle and the blue screen, having this set for happening, let's say at 1 o'clock in the morning, and it can go through all of its startup and shutdowns and all this sort of stuff as it applies updates, may be a lot more user-friendly for them, as well as it avoids you getting a telephone call in the middle of the night and saying, Elaine, my computer's going nuts. Is that this the right way it's supposed to happening? Okay, avoid that scenario. All right, so I'm going to switch back to our PowerPoint. I'm just going to keep talking through our scenarios, okay? All right, so this is all about the updates. Consider how best to put these things in to make sure that your person has a workable computer. Next thing you want to consider is the internet browser. You want a browser that works with all of their apps, videos, and security improvements. This might be a Google Chrome, it could be Firefox, it could be Internet Explorer, but just keep in mind there's a lot of companies right now that do not have a working application that gets associated with Internet Explorer. You're going to want to put another browser on. Another one might be Safari. So if they happen to be very familiar with their iPhone, if they have that as their smartphone, okay, you may want to consider actually using Safari as their internet browser because they're used to using it. Again, familiarity. You do have Edge, and there are probably some other ones even out there. Okay, work with each one that they have and install the one that works with everything that they need to do. Go back to your game plan and see what has to happen. Test the browser with each one of these items. As an example, my father has a golf show that he subscribes to that he looks for the lesson plans with it. It comes through by video. When he first got access into it, it was defaulting opening up into Microsoft Edge. The program shows fine. However, the ability to log in and chat with the other individuals was not there. It was not visible using this particular browser. Once I opened up the application in Chrome, everything appeared. He was able to log into the video. He was able to chat with the instructor. Everything was fine. Now, why was it important for him to be able to chat with the instructor? That was also his way of being able to record his attendance to the video, as well as he was open to being able to be eligible for the weekly drawing. Never get between a man and his ability to earn free stuff, okay? So double check everything that you want to use on your computer and make sure that those browsers work with it. Create a shortcut for both the desktop and the taskbar and possibly even on the start menu. However you're planning on having your individual access each of these items, make sure that it's visible to them. And if possible, have an icon appearance-wise that's very similar to what's on their smartphone. Again, we're going back to that goal of our of setting up everything with familiarity. All right. So now that we've kind of set up with our updates, we've got everything kind of in our system at this point, let's look at what has caused our person to start saying some profanity in our presence. All right, the first thing that might happen is when they log in on their computer, they see all these what's called fun facts. So on the image on the left-hand side of your screen, and you've probably seen this, you have both the time and the date, but you also see these three little areas that they ask you questions. One might say, like what you see. Another one might say, if you want to have some more help with this, or do you want to see where this particular site is? You want to see similar pictures, click here. Well, a person who is unfamiliar and with a computer, well, odds are click on one of those three areas. So once they get past their password that we're about to come to, it's going to open up an internet browser. It's going to display whatever they've clicked on at this point from this lock screen. All right. And they could easily get confused. How did I get here? How do I get it off? You can take these things off and you can make it so it looks like the image on the right-hand side of your screen. You can still keep the time and the date on there, but remove all the fun facts. It will solve a lot of issues for you. Okay. So how do I do that? All right, I'm going to share my screen back to where we were again. So hold on for a second. All right, you're still going to see my PowerPoint at this point, not a problem. All right, but now you should see my desktop. All right, I'm going to come down here to the bottom of my screen here again for my start menu, bottom left corner, click on here. I'm going to go into my settings. Now it's going to default here to where we were last, which was power and sleep. So I'm going to come up here to my top left corner of my screen, and I'm going to go back one step. So I'm on my main page. This is what you would normally see when you click on settings. All right, and to remove the fun facts, we're going to go into personalization. So up here on my top right, I have my personalization. I'm going to just kind of like float my cursor around there a little bit. I'm going to click on there. And over here on my left-hand side, I'm going to see my lock screen. All right, this shows me a visual of what my lock screen looks like. And we want to, you can choose a picture of what you want to do here. And of course, this doesn't show the same thing as what I've got on my screen. All right, one of the options that is going to be listed down underneath here is going to be shutting off the fun facts and tips. It's just an on or off switch. You just have to toggle it. And once you do, those particular fun facts will drop off of this screen and it will clear off. My computer here is set up differently than my laptop, so it's in a little bit different spot. All right, so I'm just going to go back to our main screen so we get started with that. All right, the other thing that if you decide to leave your computer with the ability to go into sleep mode, all right, one of the many complaints that users have is that once they click on the power switch to reawaken the computer from this particular point, it comes back with a password. All right, how do we go ahead and disable that additional set of passwords required to get into the computer each and every time? So while we're here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at that. So here on our main Windows page, our Windows settings page, we're going to go into our accounts right here. All right. Now again, this is set up for the library, so it is a lot different than possibly what your personal unit is looking like. Over here on the left-hand side of your screen, all right, we have our sign-in options. All right, in our main section here of our screen, right under here where it says require sign-in. All right, and you'll see here that right now it's even defaulting. When the PC wakes up from sleep, it's going to require me to input a password. To change that to never, you just hit this downward facing arrow. and you select never. So that way, when you power it up from sleep mode, you will not be prompted to put in a password. All right.
Boss.
You got lost? Okay, so let me come back here to my main page. Here's Windows settings. We go into accounts. Okay. Here on the left-hand side of your screen, click on sign in options. The third one down. Under the sign in options in the center of your page, look for the header that says require sign in. Underneath here, when it says right now, my laptop is set up for when PC wakes up from sleep. If you click the downward facing arrow, you can change that to never.
It's kind of dangerous on a laptop, isn't it, if you take it anywhere?
It is, especially if you leave it on with the sleep mode activated. It's really a question of, do you or the user that you're about to give this computer device to, does that make sense for them? If you want to leave it with some security, leave this set as with the password on. But again, not knowing how familiar your user is with a computer device, it may make sense to take it off until they get more comfortable and then putting it on. All right, so what I'm going to do, then I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint real quick, catch up with what we're doing. So we already talked about the lock screen. Here's how to disable the password from sleep mode. This is not when you power up the computer from a dead shutdown, okay? This is only if you put it in sleep mode. The last thing I want to do show you is if you happen to have a laptop, is that infamous little touchpad that's right there in the center. A lot of people keep this thing activated because they may not have an external mouse, all right? But you can disable this thing. So if you plug in an external, it shuts itself off, or you can actually disable the thing entirely, regardless if you use an external mouse or not. But this way you don't have to have, and I've seen people do it, put a piece of cardboard over the particular little touchpad to avoid it being activated. So let me go back over here to our screen. Not sure that that did it. So bear with me as I come back over here. There we go. All right, so you should see my desktop again at this point. All right, I'm going to come down here to my start menu in my lower left. I'm going to activate to my settings, second one up here. Now, right now it's defaulting because that's where we were originally. Okay, it's back in our sign-in options. So I'm going to come up here to my top left, hit my left facing arrow and come back to my main page. All right, under devices, click on that. If you have a laptop, you will see this option. If you do not have a laptop, you will not see this option. So do not panic if you don't. All right, but if you have a laptop, on your left-hand side of your screen, your fourth item down should be Touchpad. If you click on Touchpad, your very first option right up here on the top is either to turn it on or turn it off. So you can actually shut this thing off so you do not have to interface with it whatsoever anymore.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm playing with a laptop, right?
Yep.
I go to touchpad, it tells me tap, but it doesn't give me the touchpad on off choice.
My laptop also gives me sensitivity, medium sensitivity, high sensitivity, and most sensitivity, no on and off.
Okay, up here at the very tippy top, underneath the word touchpad at your top of your screen, do you see an on-off toggle?
No,
No,
All right, so when the class ends, stay online. We'll do some research on you because it might be your type of laptop of how to shut that particular one off.
Okay.
Okay. All right, but normally that's where you would see it, but we'll make sure that we get it based on your particular model because each model, it is put into a different spot. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to back up just to our main settings page, just so we can keep that going. All right, and I'm going to come back to our PowerPoint. Okay, so now we're going to go into your personal settings. And the first thing we want to look at is the mouse cursor or pointer, however you want to call it. All right, by default it is a arrow, black outline, white fill. You can change it to any of the options that you see there on the right-hand side, where you can enlarge the size of it so it becomes a lot larger on your screen, as well as you can fill it with different colors. All right. Again, on your game plan, did someone write down, we can't see it, it's too small, I don't know where you're pointing at because I can't see it. These are your options of where you can actually go to address this particular thing. One caution point, be aware if your user is colorblind. You do not want to select a color for them that they might not be able to see. It will default to either a black or a brown background, which might be what they're also saying that they can't see very clearly.
We got lost again. I think we're supposed to be on devices. Is that where we're supposed to be?
I haven't gotten on to that just yet, Ken. I'm still on the
Where are you
PowerPoint.
now? Are you on personalization or someplace else?
We're going to be going into that area. We're actually going to be going into the
Are you now?
ease of access.
Oh,
All right.
you're not actually doing this. This is what it shows on your PowerPoint.
Okay. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our screen. Okay. So you should see my desktop at this point. I'm going to go into our start menu again and here into my settings. All right. We're going to be talking about ease of access and a lot of the things that are inside of here. All right. So ease of access right here is one of our options on our settings page. All right, we're going to start with the mouse pointer, and then we will be getting into text. So here's my mouse pointer on my left-hand side of my screen. If I click on that, here's my options that I have here. To change my pointer size, we have a slider bar indicated here. The one on the far left is small, and that's usually what it defaults to from the manufacturer, but you can enlarge it. All you have to do is take your mouse cursor right now, your pointer, put it on this slider bar, click and hold with your left mouse button and drag it left or right. Now, I would do that to show it to you. However, one of the limitations of Zoom is that it does not show when I can increase it. So I could have this as large as possible on my screen, but what will be visible to you on yours will still be the same amount. So go ahead and play with that if you'd like to, just to increase the size of it. You also have the ability to change the fill color. So right now I've chosen a pink. Why did I choose a pink? Sometimes that's a little bit easier to see visually on your end, just so you know where my cursor is. But you can change it to any of these colors, or if you want to choose a different color, just click here on this plus symbol, and you'll be able to have some additional options for yourself. Again, was this something that they listed on their game plan that they couldn't find it on their screen? Now, another thing that they might be doing is they lose it on their screen. We've all been guilty of this. Somehow it gets, this particular little arrow gets lost on the screen, especially when we're surfing the internet. Where can we find it, or how can we find it when it gets lost like that? Sometimes we just go up to to our mouse and we just kind of shake it a little bit and hope that we can see where something is rotating there. We don't have to necessarily do that. We can actually have it ping just as if it was a sonar. Okay, so we're going to have to come back up here on the top. So I'm going to click my back arrow button here at the top of my screen. I'm going to go into my devices because I'm going to do something very specific with the mouse. So find your word devices, click on that. Third one down here says mouse. Yours might be a different number, but it does say mouse on the left-hand side of your screen. So if I click on that, they don't have it in the same spot. Of course they don't. Okay. All right. So I have to move my scan here, or my look-see of everybody's images here. Over on my right-hand side, yours may be down here below on the main screen, but regardless, you'll still see something here that says additional mouse options. If you click on that, you get a little pop-up that appears. It will default to buttons. We'll come back to that in a second. But what you want to do is look up here on the top where these tabs are and go into pointer options. And down here at the bottom, show location of pointer when I press the control key. If you click this button, your apply button down here on the screen will be bold, and you'll be able to click on it. And then at that point, every time that you press the control key, you'll actually see it ping. Okay, just as if it was a sonar and we were in a submarine. And sometimes that's a lot more visual for you than just having it rubbing on, taking your mouse and just going back and forth very quickly. So consider that option if you want to locate. While we're here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to address the sensitivity of the mouse button when you double click. One of the complaints that I have, especially from some individuals who have problems with dexterity in their hands, is that they cannot double click a mouse button quick enough for a folder to open or an icon to be enacted, anything like that. You can adjust that sensitivity. And while we're here, I'm going to show you how to do that. In this pop-up box that we've got here, I'm going to go back over here to my tabs. And I'm going to click on the one that says buttons. In the center of the screen where you see double click speed, right? You have a slider button here from slow to fast. And you have a little folder that's right here on the right-hand side. My pointer is on it right now. To test your ability to double click an item, all you have to do is double click on this little folder. If the folder opens, your sensitivity is set for the speed that you can double click on your mouse. If the folder does not open, you want to slow the thing down. You just go over here to the slider bar and back it up 2 degrees just by clicking with your left mouse button, dragging over. When you release the left mouse button, it will be set there. Come back over here to the folder and click it again. You may need to click it a couple of times to try to get it open, but reset this as slow or as fast as you need based on the dexterity of your finger. Because there's some people that when they click twice, they click once, there's a distinct break, pause, and then they click it again. It's a real slow. So you may have to take the slider bar, switch it all the way there to the left for them. When they click that twice on the icon, it actually would open up for them. Once you update this, again, your apply button will be bolded. Go ahead and hit apply at that point. And now your mouse is set up for your particular needs and your level of dexterity. To get off of this, all you have to do is press this little X button here at the top right corner of your screen. All right, so that's your mouse, where we've changed the look of your mouse, the size of your mouse, and then defined it on your screen, as well as how dexterous your fingers are when you double click on the buttons. I've come back to my main window setting at this point. And what we're going to do is we're going to look now at text size. All right. Text can be as big or as small as you particularly want. All right. What we're looking at is just the sheer size. I'm not changing the font style, meaning that how it appears on your screen. I'm just looking at physical size. So to do that, here on our main Windows settings, we're going to go over to ease of access again. And it's going to default on display. And this is where you're going to want to adjust the size of your text on your screen. Under display, this very first setting right here, all right, you have a sample text line, and then you have a slider bar. Again, this is going to be set for a certain degree from the manufacturer. You can increase it or decrease it depending upon the strength of your eyes. Just put your pointer here onto the slider bar, click with your left mouse button and continue to hold it depressed, and then drag it left or right. You'll see your sample text adjust appropriately based on where this slider is. When it comes up to the size that you feel that you can read it confidently, underneath the slider bar, you see this apply button. It will bold itself and you just hit apply. And from that point on, it will be larger. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the text will appear bigger inside of anything that is Microsoft, anything that is on your desktop, and in some cases, the internet browser that you use and some of your software. One of the steps, if you recall, that I told you to do when you set up a computer is to test everything. So if you do adjust the text size, make sure that you go back into each one of those applications and software to make sure that the text size increased also inside of there. If it did not, you're going to have to go into the settings themselves and update the text from there. All right, in this area here, you can make everything bigger if that's what you want. I don't particularly like to do that here because that makes, I can't control it individually. I may want to leave my text at the same size it is, but I want my icons to be bigger. So I like to have the control of having it separate versus all together. But if you want to do everything bigger at one time, you can do it right here in this section just by clicking this downward facing arrow and changing it from 100 to whatever % higher that you want to go. If you're looking for any sort of brightness, right now it usually defaults to 100%. But however, if you happen to have some visual problems that requires you to be able to a little bit less vibrant, you can also drag this slider bar here back to the beginning and you can actually adjust for it there. Again, that's based on visual needs. Do not change it if you don't need to. All right, while we're on the screen, I want to talk to you about high contrast. All right, over on the left-hand side of your screen, here's high contrast while we're talking about visual requirements. If I click on high contrast, my option right now is set to off. So here on my center of my screen, I have my option here. It says use high contrast and it's set to off. If I change this to on, what you see down here that's kind of grayed out will then become very, very bold. What it does is it puts, instead of a white background and everything overlaying on top of it, it ends up changing the background to be entirely black and all the colors sitting on top of it. You do not want to change this if you have normal vision. You're only going to want to change this if your eye doctor tells you that this is the best way for you to be able to process the items that are there on your screen. Okay. You do not want to change this simply because it will give you a headache if you have normal vision. But I want to show this out there in case your user requires this, and they will be able to tell you this based on an eye doctor's diagnosis. If you do that, all you have to do is hit apply down here at the bottom, and it will keep that going forward. Now, I had mentioned to you one other time about color blindness. While we're here, I'm going to show you how to adjust for color blindness. Again, over here on the left-hand side of your screen, you have something called color filters. If I click on that, defaults here to my center. My top section here, it says use color filters. Right now, my computer is set to off. If I turn that on, I have some abilities down here to select the type of vision that my eyesight needs. If I've been diagnosed with color blindness, I've been told what type of color blindness I have. All right. And you may have this, and I am going to kill this name. I apologize ahead of time. Deuteranopia. All right. I'm hoping I pronounced that right. Protaniopia and Tritaniopia. Again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing them, but you can actually set this to adjust for any sort of color blindness that your user may have. If, however, they also have a grayscale, they only see in gray. All right, some people have that. You can actually switch it so these then your color selections become a grayscale, and you can invert it or keep it just as grayscale. Again, this is all dependent upon what you've been diagnosed with or what your eye doctor has told you that this is your condition. You can adjust for it, and so that way you can see what's on the screen like everybody else can. All right, we will come back here in a little bit to talk about the narrator and the magnifier, but I do want to go into the volume a little bit because some people have I'm trying to think, and it's totally escaping me, but they have the ear amplifiers.
Hearing aids or cochlear implants.
There you go. I knew I was, thank you so much, Sue. I was just totally escaping me this today. All right. Most of us already know how to adjust for volume on our screen. Okay. And it's a real easy setting down here on your taskbar on the lower edge of your screen. You have what looks like the speaker here with lines coming out. You can actually click on that. All right. Slider bar comes up and you can slide left and right to adjust the level of hearing. If your user requires higher level, set that for higher. Okay. You'll hear a ping and they'll just confirm, can you hear it? Can you hear it? That sort of thing. And you set it to that level. Now, if you happen to have the hearing aids or the cochlear implants, like Sue had mentioned there, you may have some other sort of requirements for yourself. If you think about when you go into a movie theater and they start doing the testing of sound, you hear that big whoom sound come in through the thing. They're trying to make sure that all of the speakers are set, but you also have the differentiation of where some of the sounds appear from. Like for instance, the bass sounds will come from behind you, where versus the horns or woodwinds may come from the front coming towards you in those particular speakers, right? You have a splitting of sound. When you have hearing aids or cochlear implants, they cannot process where these new sounds are coming from out of a speaker system. All right, they would prefer to have it all in one area so it all comes to them as out of the same level at the speaker at the same. If you have deafness in one ear, you only want the speaker to be working from the one side. So if you have it left on stereo mode, you're only going to hear certain tones. You're not going to hear the full concert of music. You want it all to come from the one speaker. So to do that, All right, we're going to come over here to our settings. Okay, and we're going to go onto down here under audio. All right, so we're still under ease of access. We're still on the left-hand side of our screen, and we're going to go over here to audio. This is another spot that you can actually change the volume with, similar to what we did down here at the bottom of our screen via our taskbar. But underneath that slider bar, you're going to see a heading here that says turn on mono audio. Okay, and basically it's combining your left and right audio channels into one. All you have to do is turn this thing on. And instead of separating sound out in your speakers, instead it will combine them and pump out everything via each speaker with the same, all the notes in one. It definitely helps if you're wearing your hearing aids as well as the implants, or if you happen to have any sort of hearing loss in one side of your ear versus the other. Now, if you also are completely deaf or have some significant hearing loss that you cannot hear sound whatsoever, if you want to have an alert show up on your screen, you can have it visually appear. All right, meaning that you can have your screen flash or vibrate or do whatever. Okay, underneath here, show audio alerts visually. Right now my computer is set to no, but you can actually click this downward facing arrow and you could switch it to a different level. Think of those times if you happen to have grandchildren or teenagers at home and they're sitting there gaming and they are so involved in that particular screen. All right, you can send an alert to their computer and it will actually flash on their screen. Doop, 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 doop. And so it tells them something's happening, get off the computer and go somewhere else. Okay. So you can actually set this up. Now, the other features that I want to show to you here are ones that I'm going to just kind of talk about and briefly. You're really going to want to look at your users' needs, and I'm also going to refer you to the Microsoft site to get further details on this, just because they involve a learning curve. All right, we'll talk about each one so you know what they are, but these might also be something that you may want to consider. The first one up is magnifier. So here on my left-hand side of my screen, if I click on magnifier, I have my option of turning it on and off, but it also shows me some ways to actually turn it off just with some keystrokes. This might be of interest to your user, so you may want to record those down if they want to use this. Right now, if I turn this thing on, it's going to take and enlarge my entire screen. It's going to look like just as if I was holding up a magnifying glass, and the whole screen gets bigger. You may want to do that. Just because they need it greater than what the sizing that we could control with text sizes or icon size. Some people need it very, very large, and you can actually adjust this to upwards to about 500%. Just keep in mind that you're going to have to move your mouse around a little bit to go from one side of the screen to the other, because it will blow up everything. But if they're already using a magnifying glass to be able to see anything on their screen right now, or a newspaper or a piece of paper, they might be very willing to use this magnifier feature on their computer to be able to see something very, very easily. All right, next thing I want to talk to you about, and is not one here that's on my laptop here, but it is on my desktop unit, is dictation. All right, and that will be an option underneath over here on the left hand side if you have that option available to you. Again, my laptop computer is a couple of iterations behind, but dictation allows the person to not have to worry about typing in on the computer. You just have to start it up. The one caveat is that you do have to have internet access to be able to use this. So this is not something that you can take with you and do, let's say, up in an airplane. okay? And where you're dictating a letter while you're flying from location to location. You need internet access to be able to do this. There is a learning curve with this particular one because the person needs to know the computer codes to be able to tell the system how to move from line to line, make a new paragraph, start a page, save a particular document. You have certain phrases that you have to use. If your user is already conditioned and already does this on a daily basis, this might be a very small learning curve. If, however, you're going from no typing skills whatsoever, and then you're trying to start up dictation, there may be a large learning curve with that. I recommend that you take a look at the information that's presented on the Microsoft website about dictation so you can get a little bit more information in that regard. But it is a very viable option, especially if people do not know how to type. The other option that I want to show you here is narrator. Again, this is over here on the left-hand side of the screen.
Let me ask a question.
Do what? I'm sorry, what's that, Ken?
Now, we have a choice, we don't have dictation, but we do have speech. Is that the equivalent of dictation?
It could be, yes, but it may also be the narrator version.
We also have narrator.
Okay, so we'll take a look at your speech one also at the end of the class to see if that's also what's available on your particular option on your model, okay? All right, under narrator, again, this is something I would refer you to the website. This is to get a lot more options. This will, if you turn it on, and you can turn it on right here in the center, all right, it will actually read everything to you that's on the screen. And you're going to want to teach it what items you want it to read and what items to ignore. And so to be able to get these settings correct for your individual, you're going to want to know what each one of these does. All right. And you're going to want to talk about voice speed. You can actually change the voice that it's listing out to you, man's voice, women's voice, the amount of accent that's present on there. You can do voice pitch and you can do voice volume, but you're going to want to play with that a little bit to get it customized in there. It will read everything that's on your screen. All right, I do want to make sure that you know that. So if you only want to read certain items, you may want to consider figuring out what settings to use to be able to only pick certain things. It will take time to go through each one of those things when it does read a screen, because it will read everything. So if I open it up and I said narrator to this screen, it's going to say you are on the narrator screen. All right. It's going to say use narrator, turn on narrator, on or off, open narrator home link, view the guide to narrator online, and it will keep reading. It will not pause to say, okay, click on this. You have to wait for the entire end, and then you'll be able to tell it, and then it will go from there. So narrator, take it with a grain of salt, whether or not that might be of use for you. But it is a very good option, especially if someone has difficulty seeing. This might be their option to still be able to use an electronic device, but will not have to rely on actually having anything visual on the screen. All right, I'm going to quickly go back to our PowerPoint and wrap up what we were doing, touch on the last thing, and then I will open the floor up for some more questions. So hold on for just a second. All right, so let me catch up to what we did. We customized our mouse. This is what the ping will look like on your screen. If you do activate that, it looks just as if it was like a little sonar from a submarine. We customized the mouse. We updated our text size. You can change the view of the icons just from the desktop area alone by just changing it from small, medium, and large. And I personally think that the large view is very easy to see without having to work on changing everything up to certain degrees. This is what the high contrast looks like. If you activate it, it actually switches everything to the black background. This is the color change if you're colorblind. We optimized the sound. We talked about 3 very particular things that you may want to experiment with, but I would really suggest that you do some further research on them. And the last step that I want to make sure that everybody does do is that you want to give very detailed instructions on how to access each one of the user's applications and how to use them. So just like I provided to you the instruction sheet on how to find and locate each one of these particular areas or settings that we talk about today, you're going to do something similar for them because they will use it religiously. They are very good about it in that regard to make sure that they can get and do what they need to do. But if you're not there, that's their fallback plan, is to have those things written down. And like I said, demo the software, and you're going to do that multiple times. You want the confidence level to be there. You want them to be able to use this device and use it competently. All right. So that's all I was planning on presenting for today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop my share at this point. Come back to here, and I'm going to stop our recording, and then I'm going to go into any sort of questions that you might have at this particular moment, okay? So let me go ahead and stop my recording. Say thank you to everybody for attending. And again, if you need any further help, just give me a call here at the library.